Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another Through the Bible episode. 31 days in a month and 31 chapters in Proverbs, and we're going right through them. And there's some concept that I brought up earlier about these Proverbs in the book of Proverbs, where it's basically you have parallel ideas in the verses. And right here, this book goes in to explain that. Basically, it's a type of poetry, and I'm going to tell you what that type of poetry is right here in 1 second. Okay, Hebrew poetry characteristically had 2, sometimes 3 lines that are parallel in thought rather than rhyme. In synonymous parallelism, the second line repeated the essence of the first, only in different words. In antithetic parallelism, the second line stated the opposite one of the first. So it's antithetic parallelism. With the humble, there is wisdom. But when pride comes shame. So you have 2 opposite views. That is called antithetic parallelism. The second line stated the opposite of the first line. When the later line built on the first without either repeating or contrasting, it is referred as synthetic parallelism. So we have synonymous parallelism, which basically the first and second repeat the same idea. We have antithetic parallelism, where the second line stated the opposite of the first, and then later line, when they do not contrast, when the later line built on the first without either repeating or contrasting, it is called synthetic parallelism. All right, I wanted to just define that before I went any further. All right, Proverbs chapter 13. Right here we have antithetic parallelism. Proverbs 13:1. A wise child accepts a parent's discipline. A mocker refuses correction. So you have the anti-idea in the second line of the poetry. Wise words will win you a good meal, but treacherous people have an appetite for violence. Those who control their tongue will have a long life. Opening your mouth can ruin everything. And I've heard the other version that says, he who guards the gates of his mouth preserves his life, but he who opens wide its gates will have destruction. And many times our mouths invite trouble. We say the wrong thing at the wrong time to the wrong person. I can remember one time I was describing my old military job, and in the military I got a different job, and I just put that job down. Oh man, that's like going from being awesome to this terrible job, and and I used a bunch of terms to describe the new job I was assigned as, being idiotic and simple and dumb and all that. Turned out the person that I was talking to, that was their job. So it's better to kind of live your life with guarded speech in a sense, so you're not quick to offend someone, or quick to basically offend someone or ensnare yourself with your words. All right, lazy people want much but get little, but those who work hard will prosper. Okay, so there's a antithetic parallelism. Lazy people want a lot but don't get anything. Hard work brings prosperity, but those who work hard prosper. And that's one of the themes in Proverbs. Be a hard worker. Be a hard worker. The godly hate lies, but the wicked cause shame and disgrace. Godliness guards the path of the blameless, but the evil are misled by sin. Some who are poor pretend to be rich, and others who are rich pretend to be poor. The better translation is, there is one who makes himself poor, yet has great riches. And there's one who makes himself rich, yet has nothing. And that is basically what Christ asked us to do. You could get rich in this world and lose your soul, or you could become poor in this world but win your soul. So there is a person who makes himself rich, but he loses everything. And there's that person who makes himself poor, but he has great riches. And let's do a simpler definition. There's a guy who stays 14 hours every day at the office, but he's poor because he's never played catch with his son. He's never had a nice meal with his family. He's never sat around a campfire with his family and relaxed. So he's made himself rich, but he's really poor in relationships with his family. And there's one who makes himself poor, yet he has great riches. I know of a guy who turned down, I heard a story about a guy who turned down a very huge job. And they said, hey man, you're going to make triple 6 digits. You're going to make tons of money. And you're the perfect fit for the job. The only problem is you're going to have to leave your family for, 70% of the year. The guy looked him dead in the eye and said, you know what, I'm not your man for the job. I'm a family man. So that guy was poor or turned away great riches, but he was really rich. Rich in relationships. There's 2 kinds of riches. There's the relationship riches. You're rich in relationship and time with your family. And then there's the riches of the world, the money. And don't trade one for the other. Don't trade the riches of this world. Don't be on your deathbed wishing you had played catch with your son that afternoon instead of, trying to get that higher little bit of money, All right. So the godly, let's see, Proverbs 13:8. The rich can pay a ransom for their lives, but the poor won't even get threatened. The life of the godly is full of light and joy, but the light of the wicked will be snuffed out. With pride comes contention, but those who take advice are wise. There's a way of translating it that says, fights and contention come by pride. So if one person in the party will humble themselves, you can avoid conflict. Wealth got from quick, rich schemes quickly disappears, but wealth from hard work grows over time. There it is again. Hard work. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a dream fulfilled is a tree of life. People who despise advice are asking for trouble, but those who respect a command will succeed. The instruction of the wise is a life-giving fountain. Those who accept it avoid the snares of death. So these proverbs that we're reading every day, it's a life-giving fountain. And if we take heed to it, we can avoid the snares of death. A person with good sense is respected. A treacherous person is headed for destruction. Wise people think before they act. Fools don't, and even brag about their foolishness. That's one other thing that the Proverbs teaches is called prudence. Thinking before you make a decision. It might take a little bit of extra time to think things out, but it's wiser than just jumping into a situation. So to every young person out there who hears this, think through your big decisions in life. Don't just rashly jump into them. Use prudence before you act. An unreliable messenger stumbles into trouble, but a reliable messenger brings healing. If you ignore criticism, you will end in poverty and disgrace. If you accept correction, you will be honored. It is pleasant to see dreams come true, but fools refuse to turn from evil to attain them. Walk with the wise and become wise. Associate with fools and get into trouble. This right here, there's like an Al-Anon thing that I've heard before. They call it, or an Alcoholics Anonymous or something, but it's a catchy saying. It says, people, places, and things. Right here, it says, walk with the wise, you'll become wise. Associate with fools and get into trouble. I've also heard it says, if you want to succeed in life, hang around successful people. So for young people, if you associate with the fools and the evil people, that's who you are going to become. You are who you associate with. But if you associate with wise, you'll become wise, right? So try to find successful, wise people and associate with them. Trouble chases sinners, while blessings reward the righteous. It goes without saying every time, but this book of Proverbs is full of promises for people who are living godly, righteous lives. Right here we have blessings overtaking us, but it says trouble chases sinners. Good people leave an inheritance for their grandchildren, but the sinner's wealth passes to the godly. A poor person's farm may produce much food, but injustice sweeps it away. Those who spare the rod of discipline hate their child. Those who love their child care enough to discipline them. Now you would think, why would it say that? Well, because a child left to himself will really ruin himself. If you have no discipline and he doesn't realize there's any punishment or that negative behavior brings about negative circumstances, then he'll just continue to be negative. Just kind of let off the chain and going wild, run through the grocery store knocking stuff over. If he never gets corrected for that, then as a teenager runs through town knocking stuff over. Then as an adult running through town going wild. Those who spare the rod hate their children. So if you really don't love your children, don't ever correct them. But if you love them, even though it really hurts you and pains you, you have to correct them when they're misbehaving in a loving, disciplined way. But if you do that, it means you love your child. Because those who love them, you care enough to discipline them. There you go. The godly eat their heart's content, but the belly of the wicked goes hungry. So once again, we've read Proverbs chapter 13, and it's gone over to reiterate some of the things. Pride leads to fighting, but those who take advice are wise. The life of the godly is full of light and joy. We should accept correction. We'll be honored if we do that. Lazy people want a lot, but they get little. But those who work hard will prosper. So right here in this chapter, again, we see hard work. Hard work. Wisdom is hard work. If you're a hard worker, you're wise. And then let me just, for the intellectual people out there who want to gain little insights and intellectual things, can you remember what the three types of Hebrew poetry described were? They were called parallelism, and we'll finish on that note. But also, we should go over the idea that living a godly life has a lot of rewards. And, the world, as much as it makes evil out to be like the coolest, greatest thing ever, to drink as much, party as much, run with the evil, wicked crowd, the Bible clearly, through its wisdom, says that all that ends in trouble and horror. But a companion of wise people will become wise. But if you run with fools, you get destroyed. Let me just find this here one last time to go over the different types of poetry, because I know I wanted to know it. I learned it at one time. Hebrew poetry characteristically had 2, sometimes 3 lines that are parallel in thought, rather than in rhyme. In synonymous parallelism, the second line repeated the essence of the first, just in different words. In antithetic parallelism, the second line stated the opposite of the first. So the first one says, the lazy want, but they get nothing. The lazy want a lot, but they refuse to work, so they don't get anything. But hard work leads to prosperity. That right there is an antithetic parallelism. It's a 2-line poetry, and the second line is the opposite of the first. Okay, when the later line built on the first, without either repeating or contrasting, it is referred to as synthetic. So you have synonymous parallelism, where the second line just repeats the first. You have antithetic parallelism, where the second line stated is the opposite. And then you have the synthetic parallelism, where it basically just repeats and builds on it. So I hope these Proverbs are going deep into your soul, and that you realize they can be a life-saving light to you. So let's go over a few concepts we got in Proverbs 13. Allow to be corrected. Correct yourself. Love correction. Love hard work. You'll have wealth if you work hard. Number 3. If you really love your children, you'll correct them. Because if you leave them to themselves, they will basically destroy themselves. Another concept we got out of this one was basically, we had laziness, to avoid that. We have hard work. We have correcting your children. And we also have humility. Because when pride comes, then also comes fighting and contention. All right, I hope you got a lot out of Proverbs chapter 13. Know that it tells you to work hard, to Definitely correct your children if you love them, and to avoid contention and pride, and also accept criticism of other people. Oh, and the other big concept here was associate with wise and you become wise. Associate with fools, become a fool, become ruined. So people, places, things, you are who you associate with. So try to associate with wise people. All right, have a great day. Thank you for joining in.